Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is the 1 hour chart of oil provided by netdunia.com. You can click on the link below. Oil was a big story today because you can see we got this sudden reversal and a drop of about from nearly 87 all the way down to 81. So nearly a $6 drop. That's, you know, 6 or 7% move from high to low, so a very large move, and you can see that it rallied, hit the trend line, the downtrend line, and then just couldn't quite make it and turned around and went down. So the deflation story is still there, and the powers that be are still playing the deflation card. They definitely want things to get very low before they print up trillions more dollars, euros, whatever they're going to print up to try to bail out their friends, the bankers. So they're pushing the deflation scare theme. Now, silver backed off a little bit, not a lot. If you pull out the chart, you can see it's still kind of rallying in this little phase here. Has a little trend channel that it's forming. Roughly something like this. So that's where silver is out. When we look at the long term, of course, the big long term picture, we're still looking at this massive wedge or pennant formation that goes all the way back to the bottom during the financial crisis. So we're coming fairly quickly towards a resolution one way or the other. I would expect a pretty violent move when we do get out of this area. Based on this time, projections would say we have about maybe 1 to 2 months left at the most before we get a possibly dramatic move one way or the other. Can't say for sure, but it appears to be the case. And so let's go over to the question of the day, and that is from Jacob, and it is the price, Kaiser, new Greek currency. Brother John, have you seen these interviews yet? And it's a link to the victory report. This is a very significant development. You and I agree that silver is set to take off. It strikes me as the only way for this to happen is if physical silver is used in a new way, so much so that the demand of physical metal itself, not paper contracts, creates a massive surge in demand. I'd like to hear what you think of this. Well, it's primarily in Spanish, so I'm not going to go there, but I try to listen to as much as I can. I think that it's about a new standard. Now, a lot of people have been discussing the fact I mentioned the gold standard, and I think I want to clarify that first. I think there's a little bit of confusion when I talk about the gold standard. When I talk about bringing back the gold standard, I'm talking about bringing back a gold standard for settlement of international payments. So I'm not talking about a strictly gold standard for internal money for within a nation, but for balancing payments of trade between nations. Now, I've always supported the constitutional model, which is a bimetallic standard. The reason for that is that the metals fluctuate in relation to each other, and so I'm for a free-floating bimetallic standard. In other words, let the market decide how much silver is worth an ounce of gold, etc. But let them both be money, and traditionally the people have used silver and the bankers and the rich people have used gold. But as long as both are available and both trade in a free market, it will be very difficult for anyone to corner the money. And of course, that's why they tried to do away with that constitutional requirement and by demonetizing silver. So I think the framers were right. That's the best system. Now, do I think that there needs to be a new use of silver? Actually, I don't. I think that the uses for silver right now are tremendous, and if you just look at the properties that silver has, it is the most reflective, the most electrically conductive, and the most thermally conductive. So just those three properties alone, you just have to think about a little bit to realize. The reflective is anything with solar or mirrors. The electrical is anything that is electrical contacts, and the thermal is anything that transmits heat, which includes both the computer gadgets and the solar. So it's just it's so huge what's going to happen to silver just on the industrial side. But then again, it's also being remonetized. The people are doing that slowly. You can see that in the number of Silver Eagles that are being purchased. As Eric Sprott frequently points out, dollar for dollar, the people are buying just as much silver as they're buying gold. So the price simply cannot stay at a 50 to 60 to 1 ratio between gold and silver. That ratio has to compress, and I don't think it's going to compress by the price of gold falling. I think that it's going to compress by the price of silver and gold rising, but silver rising more. So I really don't think there's anything needed to make the price of silver explode, except for the people to just wake up and realize what a value it is. And then there would just be a mad rush. And that's the main problem with all these things, is that the people are so brainwashed and the people are so dumbed down that they just can't see through the propaganda that is put out by the powers that be. And I wanted to use that idea to segue into the main story of the night, and that is going to be Argentina and what is going on down there. I'm going to start out with this is a Baltic dry index, but I was going to talk about that in relation to gold and oil. As you can see, we were talking earlier about the deflationary story, and you can see here with the Baltic dry index that if there's going to be a deflationary story, then we would literally have to fall off the cliff if that's going to be the case, because the Baltic dry is already practically at nothing. But I wanted to show you that Argentine US dollar cross to start off with. Now this is the ARS USD. It's hard to find charts of that. NetDanny doesn't have them. They're not. It's not a real common currency. But this is the Yahoo currency cross, and we can put on interactive and get a little bit larger chart. So you can see I decided to do the ARS/US dollar. You can do it either way. You can do US dollar/ARS or however you wanted it. Actually, now that I put it on the max here, I'm glad I did it this way, because you actually get to see the last time that they devalued the Argentine peso. So that was back in the crisis of 2001, and you can see that the currency lost, it lost 60, 70% of its value, something like that. It had a little bit of a rally, and then it turned up, and now you can see it's headed down again. We're at 0.22. I think if we go to our interactive chart, we can see what the very bottom of that was, that crisis, and you can see, yeah, we've penetrated the lows of the previous crisis. So that's going to be a very bearish scenario. If you look at the 1 year chart, you can see that it's down. Actually, I want to pull out to a 2 year or even a 5 year. And you can see that we've dropped from about 33 cents, and we're now down to about 23, 22 cents. So the Argentine peso is rapidly again heading to the junk pile of history. And of course, the question is why. And the thing that's so interesting about it is that, like I said about the silver story and how people are brainwashed, Same thing with the currency stories, because these things happen over and over and over again, and yet people can't seem to figure it out. So now, of course, we've got the same thing going on in Argentina that we heard hints of here in the U.S. It'll happen here. They always want to blame the speculators. It's the speculators' fault that the currency is failing, and it's the speculators, the evil speculators. It's always easy to dupe a bunch of liberal socialists into believing that, because they already naturally have an anti-free market bent. So you just have to point to evil speculators in the market, and the government gets itself off the hook. Of course, we all know, anyone with an ounce of sense knows, that the cause of the problem is the government and government policies. That's why their currency is collapsing. So let's look at some of the stories. We don't want to shed too many tears for Argentina, because they're pretty much making their own bed. So we've got this wonderful socialist president, Cristina Kirchner, down there, who wants to be the next Hugo Chavez, drive the country into bankruptcy. And so let's look at some stories here. Argentina proposes bill to allow dollar contract payments in pesos. Of course, well, their peso was worthless, and so no one wanted it. So if they wanted to borrow money, they had to borrow it in dollars. So now that the peso is collapsing against the dollar, now they're threatening to renege on that, and they want to pay back their dollar debts in pesos. So, of course, that's going to accelerate the collapse. So, again, the government causing the problem. Next story, we've got Argentina, the nationalized nightmare. Now, if you remember, in the past, they went and they seized all the pension funds of the people, and they told them, oh, well, those aren't safe for you to invest your own money. We're going to give you government bonds, and that'll be safer for you. Of course, now we know that the peso that they're paying out those government bonds in is worth less and less every day. So, of course, the people who have to use that peso, and one of those groups of people are the farmers, and the farmers are on strike. Why are the farmers on strike? Because the peso is losing its value. They have to sell their agricultural crops for pesos, and if they don't, they sell them for export, then they can get dollars, which means that the farmers are doing good. If they can get dollars for those, then they're doing better than the rest of the country, as long as they can get that. And of course, that's why the government wants to raise taxes. Here they're striking because the government is proposing raising taxes on the farmers, because the government wants wants to take a bite of that Forex transaction. So here we go. Here's the government again. Now they're having strikes. Next story, Fernandez to decide on the pesoification. Argentine President Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner will decide in coming days whether to support legislation that will force all financial transactions to be carried out in pesos. So, again, the reason why financial transactions aren't carried out in pesos is because of the irresponsible government that Ms. Kirchner is running, and nobody trusts the worthless peso. So the only way they can actually get loans and get deals done for real estate and things like that is to do it in dollars. Of course, now she's going to outlaw that, which is going to cause capital flight, which is the next story, which is already happening. Argentina loses a third of its dollar deposits, and this is from Friday. Argentines reacting to foreign exchange restrictions. About $100 million is withdrawn every day. Rush toward greenback started in November. Argentine banks have seen a third of their U.S. dollar deposits withdrawn since November as savers chase greenbacks in response to stiffening foreign exchange restrictions, local banking sources said. Depositors withdrew a total of about $100 million per day over the last month in a safe haven bid fueled by uncertainty over policies that might be adopted as pressure grows to keep U.S. currency in the country. So you can see, as the government begins to act, the money begins to run. The chase for dollars is motivated by fear that the government may further toughen its clampdown on access to the U.S. currency as high inflation and lack of faith in government policies erode the local peso. Deposits keep going down, said one foreign exchange broker who asked not to be named. there's a disparity among banks. And let's see if we can find what the government's going to say here. Feisty populist leader Fernandez was reelected in October, vowing to deepen the model of the interventionist policies associated with her predecessor, Nestor Kirchner, who is also her late husband. Since then, she has limited imports, imposed capital controls, and seized majority stake in top energy company YPF. A spokesman for the central bank said on Friday that the rate of dollar withdrawal from Argentina's financial system shows signs of slowing. We have seen a tendency toward fewer withdrawals, about 90 million per day over the last week from 120 million the week before, the spokesman said, a day after the bank lifted daily reserve requirements on dollar deposits to help banks respond to a steady drumbeat of withdrawals. Sounds like Baghdad Bob there. Ditching her dollars. The near impossibility of buying dollars at the official rate is driving some savers and investors to pay a hefty premium in the black market. Many are taking what dollars they can get their hands on, stashing them under the mattress or in safe deposit boxes, fearing moves by the government to forcibly de-dollarize the economy. Officials have strongly denied any such plan. Of course, they always deny it. They always deny that they're going to rob the people right before they rob the people. The president's battle to slow capital flight and fatten the central bank's reserves needed to pay the public debt has prompted even tighter controls in recent weeks, making it almost impossible to buy dollars at the official rate. The effect has been felt through South American countries' economy. For example, Argentines who normally pay for new homes with stacks of dollar bills have been struggling to get their hands on U.S. currency since Fernandez started imposing stringent controls on dollar buying late last year. She wants Argentines to end their love affair with the greenback and start saving in pesos, despite inflation clocked by the private economists at 25% per year. Fernandez set an example on Wednesday by vowing to swap her dollar-denominated savings accounts for fixed-term deposits in pesos. But savers in crisis-prone Argentina are notoriously jittery. Memories of tight limits on bank withdrawals and sharp currency devaluation remains fresh a decade after the country's massive sovereign debt default. There's a lot of fear considering everything that has happened, another foreign exchange broker said. Confronted by risk, whatever kind of doubt, depositors pull their dollars out of the bank and wait to see what happens. So, here we go again. It's not a big mystery. You can see the chart. The chart is clear. It's accelerating to the downside. The peso is going to again collapse. Argentine peso is going to collapse. There's going to be a currency crisis. The capital controls are starting. And the governments that do these things do the same things over and over and over and over again. Try to fight the black market. Try to fight people fleeing, trying to protect their money, and of course the whole thing always results in a collapse. So that's why you want physical gold and silver. It doesn't really matter what happens to the currency as long as you hold your gold and silver through the crisis. And I'm sure there's a lot of Argentinians right now who wish they were holding gold and silver rather than Argentine pesos. And we'll talk to you next time.